All right, let's jump right into this explainer. I want you to picture this. Imagine you are aboard the intergalactic survey vessel Magellan-7. You are suspended in the immense, staggering dark of the intergalactic void, floating somewhere between the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy. Out here, the density of matter drops to just a few solitary atoms per cubic meter. We're talking about the ultimate isolation. Now, the crew's mission is to catalog rogue planets. These are lonely worlds that were violently ejected from their home galaxies billions of years ago. And today, we are going to explore a discovery they made that fundamentally shatters literally everything we thought we knew about the universe. To really grasp just how impossible this discovery is, we need to talk about a very specific number, 2.725 Kelvin. This is the cosmic microwave background. Basically, it's the absolute ambient temperature of the universe itself. So if you have a rogue planet wandering through the void without a star for over 5 billion years, which is exactly what our crew finds with a gas giant they've named Erebus, its surface temperature should theoretically be bound to this exact number. It should just be a dead, frozen monument to entropy, right?
Well, here is where it gets crazy. Dr. Eris Thorne and quantum physicist Dr. Alara Vance look at the thermal scans of Erebus, and they find a sheer, impossible paradox. It defies all known laws of planetary cooling. The surface is a frozen solid crust of hydrogen and neon, sure, but the deep interior temperature is actually fluctuating between 1.2 and 1.8 Kelvin. Think about that for a second. It is somehow colder than the empty space around it. And, as we all know, heat naturally flows from warm to cold. For Erebus to be colder than the universe itself, there absolutely has to be some kind of active, massive refrigeration mechanism at play.
Section 1. The Impossible Rogue Planet, a Thermodynamic Miracle.
So, how exactly does an entire planet refrigerate itself for eons? Let's break down the geological mechanics of this bizarre frozen world. Dr. Vance manages to figure it out. Erebus is essentially a natural, planetary-scale cryostat. Deep down in its metallic hydrogen core, there are these massive deposits of paramagnetic salts. Now, the planet also has a highly irregular magnetic dynamo effect. When that magnetic field surges, it acts like a giant invisible hand, aligning all the electron spins in those salts. This drops their entropy and physically forces them to expel heat, which then gets carried away. But when the field collapses, the spins randomize, entropy shoots back up, and the salts absorb massive amounts of thermal energy from everything around them. It's a process called adiabatic demagnetization, and it's literally been keeping the interior of Erebus artificially frozen for billions of years.
Section 2. The superfluid ocean, beneath the solid crust.
Okay, so this extreme, self-generated cold creates a highly unusual, frankly mind-bending physical state deep within the planet's mantle. If we drop down beneath the 500-kilometer thick solid crust, we see something incredible happen to matter at these temperatures. At 1.5 Kelvin, the planet's helium mantle undergoes a radical phase transition. Normally, helium is incredibly inert, but when you cool helium-4 below 2.17 Kelvin, which physicists call the lambda point, it becomes a Bose-Einstein condensate. The individual atoms literally lose their unique identities and overlap into one single, massive, cohesive quantum wave. It becomes a superfluid. This means the fluid has absolutely zero internal viscosity, zero friction. If you stirred it in a cup, it would spin forever. Plus, it has infinite thermal conductivity, so heat doesn't just diffuse slowly through it, it moves instantly as a wave, a wild phenomenon known as second sound.
Section 3. Biology as Geometry, Macroscopic Quantum Life.
And that brings us to the real game changer. Within this pitch-black, completely frictionless ocean, the ship's sensors detect structures. Now, to figure out what these structures actually are, Dr. Eris Thorne strips things down to the absolute fundamental criteria for life. We usually think of astrobiology as hunting for carbon, liquid water, and chemical reactions. But if you take a step back, to be fundamentally alive, something really only needs 3 things: a way to store information, a mechanism to reproduce, and a metabolism driven by some kind of energy gradient. The huge question is, can something existing in inert, non-reactive helium actually meet these criteria?
Incredibly, yes. The entities in Erebus's ocean, the team calls them heliozones, meet every single one of these criteria completely without chemistry. On Earth, life uses DNA to store data. Heliozones use the exact geometry and topology of indestructible quantum vortex knots. Earth life relies on cellular division. Heliozones use a process called vortex reconnection, where their quantum lines physically cross and swap topological sequences, almost like trading genes.
Earth life metabolizes chemical energy. Heliozones literally feed on entropy. They act like macroscopic turbines, absorbing tiny heat packets, called phonons and rotons, that drift up from the core. It is pure math and kinetic energy acting as living biology. It's just wild.
Section 4. The Descent of Nereus. An engineering mission.
Naturally, the crew has to see these creatures up close. But there's a massive problem. Sending a probe into an ocean where even a fraction of a degree of heat will violently boil the helium and destroy this delicate quantum ecosystem, that is an incredibly tense engineering nightmare. So they heavily modify a penetrator probe named Nereus. They gut all the heat-generating electronics, coat the entire thing in laser-cooled rubidium atoms to completely nullify its thermal emissions, and use passive acoustic sonar instead of lights. The descent is totally harrowing. Nereus melts its way through the solid hydrogen crust, enters the violently boiling, chaotic normal liquid helium, and then it hits 2.17 Kelvin, the lambda point. And instantly, the chaotic boiling noise just vanishes. The telemetry goes perfectly flat. Nereus has entered the completely frictionless, dead silent abyss of the superfluid ocean.
Now, because the fluid has absolutely zero viscosity, there's no friction to slow the probe down. Nereus has to deploy these acoustic baffles, kind of like an underwater parachute. Once it stabilizes, the acoustic sonar kicks in, rendering the sound waves into brilliant false color images. And the dark ocean suddenly lights up with the sprawling three-dimensional tapestry of impossible geometry. The heliozones appear as these glowing emerald and sapphire threads made of hollow vortex cores. And they don't swim like fish. They dynamically manipulate their own topology to glide effortlessly through the frictionless void using the Magnus effect, just gently grazing on the red mist of thermal rotons rising from the planet's core.
Section 5. The Quantum Leviathan, Apex Entity.
As Nereus sinks even deeper, getting closer to that 1.2 Kelvin core, the scale of this alien ecosystem takes a terrifying but totally awe-inspiring turn. Surging upward from the depths is a structure over 4 kilometers across. It's a single, massive, coherent entity, a shifting, macroscopic quantum superposition made up of millions of interlinked rings. It is so incredibly dense with vortex lines that it glows on the sonar with a blinding white acoustic light. But here's the surprise. The entity doesn't attack. In a universe of perfect frictionless flow, the Nereus probe is just a clumsy, dead object blocking the superfluid. The Leviathan senses this void, hovers around it, and starts bombarding the tiny probe with concentrated microscopic pulses of second sound, literal temperature waves.
The crew frantically analyzes the frequency of these temperature pulses and realizes something absolutely staggering. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The Leviathan is pulsing prime numbers. No way, right? But it gets better. It's modulating the amplitude of that second sound to transmit topological invariance. It's essentially sending the mathematical blueprint of a Jones polynomial, a highly complex mathematical signature used for quantum knots. It is transmitting data that would take our supercomputers 30 years to decrypt. This is first contact. They have found a completely alien apex intelligence entirely devoid of organic chemistry, just pondering the math of the universe in the dark.
Obviously, the immediate question from the ship's captain is, how do we reply? But Dr. Vance realizes a very beautiful, yet totally tragic truth. The probe can only listen. If they activate any mechanical emitters to generate their own pulses of second sound, the tiny amount of heat from the actuators will push the surrounding fluid above the lambda point. They will boil the helium. To speak to this majestic entity is to literally burn it alive. So they don't. They just listen, letting their quiet, freezing presence be their only greeting.
Section 6. Redefining life itself. Biology is geometry.
Eventually, the planetary cycle shifts, Erebus's magnetic field changes, and the local temperature begins to rise, signaling the end of a core magnetization cycle. Sensing the shifting thermal tides, this massive Leviathan just gracefully unties itself, seamlessly disassembling into thousands of smaller nuts that drift away into the dark to hibernate. When the probe is finally recovered, Dr. Vance summarizes the entire paradigm-shifting nature of their mission with this brilliant observation. Biology isn't chemistry. Biology is geometry. Life at its core is just information fighting against entropy. The substrate, whether it's carbon, water, silicon, or superfluid helium, is just a canvas. As long as that planet remains cold, those living quantum knots will never untie. They are practically eternal.
Please like and subscribe.